Alright, so when we last left off, we built up this first page of the manual and gotten this. We built up the aircraft wings and the cockpit and painted inside one of the wheel wells. Next step is going to be the body. So in this video, we're going to be building up the rest of the airplane. As you can see, the steps here are very clearly defined. And what we need to do is to assemble the gun mounts inside the body and then paint inside the cockpit areas, pick out some of the details in black again, then merge the two halves of the fuselage together whilst inserting the back wheel. Then we have the merger with wings to the fuselage, attaching the back horizontal stabilizers, building up the propeller and painting it up. So that's what we're going to do. So just like before, we will proceed out to cut off all the necessary pieces. So we'll take out the body. So these are all the pieces that I've cut out from the sprues. Now, like before, we have to clean them all up, and we will speed up this process because you already know how to do this. Basically, you have to take out these little stubs that were left from the sprue and use a combination of this, and this to take care of the business. So bear with me. Alright, so we've cut out all the pieces. I've cleaned them off, test fitted them off camera. Now it's basically time to do some work. Okay, so the first order of business is to take one of these pieces and find the gun mantlet. Push it inside the little housing here, right out. Glue it from the inside. And repeat this step on the second part of the fuselage. Wherever possible, try to glue parts together from the back, because that way you will minimize the risk of seeing any melted plastic on the front of the model you're building. Now we need to take care of the paint. Like usual, we have to clean the parts prior to painting, and we're using a cotton bud soaked in alcohol, and we do this for both sides. After that is finished, I proceeded painting with RLM 75 or AK number AK 2008 if you're following along. Here I'm painting some details with black from AK Interactive, paint markings AK 11029. To make your model look a little bit more presentable once you're done gluing, it's a good idea to take a little file and just lightly sand on the surface to make the surface more uniform. Again, don't push too much. Just make sure that the sandpaper does all the sanding and not really your hand. Do it in a very gradual and slow step, not to take out too much detail. Because if you do that, then, you know, it's not gonna look very good, will it? So just be very mindful of how you're sanding and where you're sanding, and you'll be fine. This step requires patience and finesse. It's really not about a tool that you're using, but rather your own skill as a model builder. So basically I'm just sanding away to these edges where the guns are sitting to make sure that they're pretty flush with the fuselage, because they had a little lip. And then I'm going to be just smoothing them out a little bit in the end, just to make the whole model look, again, a little bit more presentable, a little bit more tidy. And I'm mindful that I don't take out a lot of detail or too much detail, because inevitably you might take out a little bit of detail because this panel lines on the whole aircraft are a little bit shallow, but nevertheless it's, I think, a good thing to do this step. Touch with your fingers to see if it has any lip or not. I mean, the paint in the end is going to tell you exactly what a good job you've done or not. That's why it's always recommended to use primer before actually painting the model, because the primer is paint that first of all prepares the surface to be painted, but most often than not it shows you imperfections in the body work, because it flows in every nook and cranny, and if there's any ridges left from the build process, you will see them if you use primer. You can use primer in spray form. The one that I would recommend is the MES Fine Primer. It's a little bit expensive for what you're getting, but it's really rather good. It's not thick, it's really thin, and it does the job fantastic. It'll do a fantastic job. All right, but because we're not gonna be using primer on this particular build, we're just gonna be using our own eyes, which melts plastic. The last thing that you can do to smooth out the lines is to use some glue to smooth out the plastic, because again, this glue or this cement melts plastic and it will take out any rough spots out with it. So that's basically it when it comes to this portion of the build. Now basically have to marry these two pieces together. So again, you just slot it in place like so. There's a little hook on the bottom, and you just snap it inside. You can hear the click, right? Right, like this. It will snap in place super fine. And you already have a paint inside of the cockpit, so we don't have to bother with that anymore. All we have to do is to secure it in place, and because this is such a tight fit, it's not gonna take a lot of glue for this step. We basically just need to make sure to go along the edges here, put a little bit of a glue inside. It will flow nicely and secure the model to the wings. Here is an even more tight fit, which is fantastic to see. And don't worry about if you have any paint spillage like here. We're gonna cover all this up with paint anyway, so it is nice to be more tidy before it, but you can be. This hobby does give you some leeway of being sloppy on certain parts anyway, not all. But that's majority of painting done. I think I need to pop this piece out just a little bit to make it more flush. There you go. Again, I'm trying to be mindful of where to put my fingers. I don't want to put them right on the soft plastic. where I just placed glue. Push the wings up a little bit to secure them, and just go around all again with the glue to make sure that it's really set and it sticks. Fantastic. Right now, the next step in the build process is to attach this piece to the nose. So basically here, just put some rather lovely glue on the tip and place this conical stuff onto the fuselage. You have to turn it the right way up so it will be nice and even, like so. Fantastical. And we will secure it in place using some glue. We'll just go all around. You can just slap it on. This glue dries really fast, so this cement. I keep saying glue, but it's a cement. So that's it. Well, the manual says that in this next step you have to attach the propeller to the body. However, we will omit this step for a little bit because you have to put this little, I don't think, holder onto the shaft first, then place the propeller with the little pin here. You can see there's a little guiding pin here. It has to go into this little hole in the side so that it secures in place like so. And then you're supposed to put this little washer thingy onto the shaft itself because it has a workable propeller. See, it spins on its axis, which we want to preserve. But however, if we do this, we're going to be having a lot of trouble with painting. So rather than to glue this on right now, we will be doing this at a later date. So we'll take this off right now. We'll put it aside and we'll continue with the rest of the model. Also, we will be omitting using the horizontal stabilizers. We won't be putting them in just yet. We'll paint them off the model because it's going to be much easier to do this as opposed to putting them in and then painting afterwards, because we have to mask this off because we have some patterns we need to do, some camouflage patterns, and it's going to be much easier doing it off the model. But what we can do are these couple of steps. So we'll put this bottom scoop on and the side exhausts on, and as well we will be assembling the landing gear down because we will be displaying the aircraft stationary. So you can put the landing gear up or down depending on what you're doing, and we will be putting the landing gear down. So we'll be putting this in place and of course the landing gear. So we have the scoop here, and this is basically very simple. It slots into this little side hole here, like so, and we'll secure it in place with cement. Right. There's a little bit of a panel gap between the scoop and the air intake, but we're not going to be really worrying about that because again, this is a basic tutorial. We're just going to build this up as good as we can and paint it up as best as we can. So these are the exhausts for the aircraft, and they're interlocking exhausts. As you can see, just like that, they interlock in the middle using these little two hooks, and this system works really well inside the model. And as you can see, it has a little edge on the top, which means that this piece has to be upright, and there's a little conical pointy thing that points to the front and a little flat edge on the back, so you have to turn them the right way around. In this case, I'm turning it onto the left side of the aircraft, so yeah, this is the left side, and you just slot it inside the slot and turn it around, take the other piece, and you'll hear it click in place, and slot it inside and it will click in place just like that. This interlocking system works really well, and you do not really need to glue it in place, but for peace of mind you can just use some glue. Slap it in just to make sure that it's really staying in. Okay, landing gear next. Here are all the landing gear pieces. that I've already cut out from their sprues and cleaned them up, just like I've shown you on other pieces prior to this. And it's basically time to test fit if the legs fit snugly inside the holes in the fuselage. Many times what happens on this smaller aircraft is the legs are a little bit too chunky and the fit is rather very tight. The landing gear have this little triangle thing on the side and it's pointing to the back of the aircraft, because this is basically a shock absorber for the landing gear that dampens the shocks when the aircraft is either taxiing or landing on an airfield. And these landing gear, like I've mentioned, have a little tight fit into the fuselage, so be really careful when you're forcing them in to not force them too much, otherwise you will bend the landing gear. The best way to describe it is to make sure that they are tightly fitting but not too tight. Once inside the fuselage, they have to be parallel and have a forward stance, just like this. And now that we know they're okay, we'll take them out and attach the landing gear covers on top of them. Use the guiding pins and holes to align them together. And you also have to be wary of where to put what cover for the landing gear. So you can see here, this one has a little bit of an edge that is angled, and this one correlates with the opening in the fuselage. You take this piece, put it on one side. What I like to do is put a little bit of glue on each stub. Then take the appropriate landing gear, which in this case is this one, because it goes on this side of the aircraft, and your landing gear, and you just put it in. And that's it. And you do the same for the other one. These are the landing gear done. We will not be putting wheels on the landing gear itself, because again, we will be painting this, and this, and this separately. But this is a topic for the next video, so please join me next time when we will be actually painting the aircraft. See you then.